everyone, and welcome back to another Rockies Daily. I'm your host, Scott Ayers, where we're talking all things Colorado Rockies. And folks, Kyle Freeland has been named the opening day starter for the Colorado Rockies when they take on the Marlins. And look, this was kind of the decision we were all expecting to see. And this makes it Kyle Freeland's fifth opening day start, which is a record for the Colorado Rockies. He had the record at 4 starts. Well, now he increases that record to 5 starts for the Rockies. And again, ultimately, this makes the most sense. Just looking at the starting pitching for the Colorado Rockies, you think that this might be his last chance as an opening day starter, but you never know. Just depending on how he does in 2026 and beyond. But look, this is going to be a favorable matchup for Freeland. And last year against the Rays, the Rockies lost that game, if you remember, but it wasn't because of Freeland. He gave them 6 scoreless frames before losing 3-2. And so this is once again going to be a favorable matchup. Bats are always a little bit colder to start the year anyways. And so Freeland has a chance to once again have a solid start for the season. And so that's obviously huge. He's looked good so far this spring. Hasn't pitched a ton of innings, but does have a 1.8 ERA. And ultimately, you're just happy for a guy like Kyle Freeland, who is a Colorado kid, who has been with the Rockies for his entire career. And it just makes you ask the question of, where does he rank for all time when it comes to being a Rocky, especially a Rocky pitcher? Which, let's face it, that list is maybe more insignificant compared to some of the great batters and position players that this team has had. But when it comes to pitching, Kyle Freeland's name has to be at least considered near the top. And this is obviously much more of a subjective conversation that we're having here versus maybe some of the other things that we talk about on this show. And so if you have an opinion, you have a comment of where you think Kyle Freeland ranks, both as just a pitcher as well as just overall player for the Colorado Rockies. I think for pitching, there's not many guys above him, if any, and I think it's just his connection, like I said, as being a Colorado kid, of being a part of probably one of the more exciting games in Rockies history, where he dominated the Chicago Cubs in that extra inning thriller, as well as just being here through some really tough times. And that's probably what would hurt his accolades, or maybe consideration for where he would rank. But ultimately, I think in terms of overall talent, Ubaldo is probably the most talented pitcher that the Rockies have ever had. But Kyle Freeland, I think he really only trails Jorge De La Rosa for wins for the Colorado Rockies. I think Aaron Cook is in that mix as well. But you think of the all-time greats, you have greats. I say grapes, all-time greats. You think of Ubaldo. I think you have to think of Jorge De La Rosa, just being the all-time wins leader. You think of Aaron Cook and Jeff Francis maybe, but Kyle Freeland is among that group as well, and he absolutely deserves the recognition and the consideration as one of the greatest ever to put on a Rockies uniform. So obviously super cool, really well deserved for him to get that 5th opening day start, and just to know that he's been able to make it work, relatively speaking. Numbers are always going to be inflated when you pitch at Coors, but he's done a pretty darn good job over the course of his career. And while Marquez and Senzatella and some of these guys, part of his class, didn't last, Freeland is kind of the last of the old guard. I understand Senzatella is still on the team, but it just feels different with Freeland compared to those guys. Now, I mentioned Marquez. He just had a 5-inning outing with the Padres. It looks like there's a chance Marquez gets the nod as a starter with the Padres. So really excited for him. But this is about Kyle Freeland, and just obviously a tip of the cap to a guy who's had to make it work at probably the hardest place to pitch, and that's Coors Field. So Freeland gets his 5th nod. He'll take on the Marlins. And let's talk about some guys. Look, Tanner Gordon, we just talked about him. I was on this show preaching, man, I'd love to see him get the 5th and final starting spot for that rotation. Not going to happen, at least to start the year. He has been optioned to be a part of the Albuquerque Isotopes, so he'll be in AAA to start the season. And this can make sense. It just depends on who they will give the nod to. If it's Antonio Senzatella, it's a waste of time. It's a question of what are we doing here. I hope it's not Senzatella. I really hope it's either Dollander or Feltner. And even that, I think Chase Dollander I'd rather see over Feltner, but I'd get why they choose Feltner. Big picture, but tough to see for Gordon to be optioned to AAA, just because he's looked so good this spring. But obviously, there's more at play. And spring can only carry so much weight in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, this decision's made, a week before, or a week and a half before season starts. And yeah, maybe it didn't feel too soon. It feels a little too soon. Would have loved to see him get one more opportunity before kicking off the season and making a decision. But ultimately, you have to trust Warren Schaefer and Alan Leichman and what their strategy will be going into the season. It's just hard to know who the fifth guy is going to be, because Tanner Gordon, of the options that we have right now, has looked the best this spring. And honestly had some really strong flashes in 2025. I know his ERA won't show that, but he really came on strong late. And it goes back, anyone but Senzatella, honestly. And I think Rockies fans will feel pretty good about it. If it's Senzatella and their spiel is we want to go with the vet approach, I mean, fine. Let those three other guys pitch in Albuquerque at the AAA level, but I just don't really see too much point of it. I know we talk about raising the floor, but I don't think at this point Senzatella raises the floor of those other three guys. I think they are just beyond Senzatella at this point in terms of what they're able to provide. That's not saying Senzatella can't be bad for, a 2-inning stint out of the bullpen, but I'd rather see any of those three guys. But that's the decision they've made. Tanner Gordon will be in Albuquerque to start the year. Adel Amador also will join him in Albuquerque. That's a little less surprising. We've talked about Amador of just more of an up-and-down player, but he's actually shown some flashes in spring, enough where you can have maybe a little excitement about him at the AAA level and in Albuquerque. So ultimately, will be really interesting. Just continuing to follow what the heck of a decision will be made for that fifth and final starter. It's just I don't know. I'm a little speechless of just Tanner Gordon being the first name that we hear being cut from this spring roster. I understand you've got to get down to be ready for opening day, but I just thought maybe his name would be more in the mix than it actually was. So really, really interesting for Gordon. I'd hate to say it, but I am a little disappointed. But ultimately, my A1 day one Chase Dollander is still in the mix, and he is the guy that I would love to see get that fifth and final spot. But I at this point wouldn't be surprised if it's Ryan Feltner. But regardless, let's move on to our final topic. Blaine Crim has been cleared to play. He's been dealing with an oblique injury. He's missed most of spring, and it's like he was out way too late at a party. You're waking up, you look outside, and you're like, what has happened? Because going into spring, Blaine Crim's name was mentioned as, hey, he could be a front runner to start at first base. And I just don't think there's any way now. He's predicted that he'll start the season at the AAA level. And it's obviously a tough timing for the injury because he didn't get a chance to really prove what was in the tank. But I don't think it really would have mattered. I think Johnson and Rumfield and Condon all showed that they are worthy enough to start at first, and all are better options at this point. And so I think Crim will be a solid guy to have at the AAA level, and you call him up if there's a few injuries at first. But at this rate, I would rather see Charlie Condon called up before him, which really means he's slotted behind quite a few guys. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You need depth throughout your organization, and he can provide that at the AAA level. But I just don't see him being called up and making an impact for the Colorado Rockies. But it is worth noting that he's been cleared to play. He's going to play. He's expected to be at the AAA level. But weird things can happen, and nothing is set in stone yet. So he'll get a chance here to hopefully prove that he belongs at least at the AAA level. But figure that's a good note to end on our show, that there's still decisions being made. There are still guys competing for spots as we speak. And as I'm recording this, the World Baseball Classic, getting ready for that final matchup. So, hey, look, the Colorado Rockies baseball is almost here, folks, and I'll be tracking it throughout. So if you like this show, if you like this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe. I promise, this is your first time. This isn't my normal background in a hotel for the rest of the week, so you get this beautiful backdrop. But regardless, thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow.